All right, we're going to restart this meeting at 7:06. We're going to stick to the agenda as it has been presented, and move right into item C, which is the superintendent's report.
Okay, I wanted to start with the legislative update. I think I indicated to you last meeting that I was going to see the governor. I actually did see the governor. It was a well-attended meeting, perhaps more overly balanced by CEA, by teachers who are concerned about a single aspect of his bill. So therefore his address was really limited to that and the teacher evaluation component. And I think I gave you some information. There are a number of statewide educational groups, the superintendent's group being one of them, trying to put out some of the misinformation that made, or the misinterpretations of the governor's plan. But I just wanted to tonight very quickly go through the fact that there are other aspects of this plan. I'm not taking a stance one way or the other, so I'm just going to give you the factual information that I have. And Brian and I discussed copying 53 pages of this bill, but decided it probably wasn't worthwhile. But if you would like your own copy, you can go online.
Doesn't Kate
So,
have a summary?
CABE probably does, yeah. Under the bill, no town receives any lower ECS grant than it currently does, and in fact, preliminary estimates show that we would have a very small increase. A lot of the increased funding will go to the more needy towns, and that's a huge piece of his legislation, and obviously linked into performance of those towns as well. There's still pieces for expanding charter schools and magnet schools, both associated with the loss of legislation. I'm sorry, no, the desegregation legislation.
Oh, Sheffield.
The Sheffield. A lot of it is focused on that piece, but it is to expand those successful schools. He wants to see more successful schools.
Can I just stop you for 1 minute? Just going back to your first point that you said that most of the funding would go to the most needy districts.
Yeah.
My understanding is that along those lines is that there would be less restrictions on the districts that aren't as needy. And how does that factor into this?
I can't really comment on that because I haven't. This is the first time I've less restrictions. No, I haven't really.
You haven't heard that?
No.
It's something I've heard about.
I think it was more like encourage, like districts that are doing
More
well.
innovation, right? I have.
But in what ways, though? I mean, how
I
does that
can't.
manifest?
Right now, I haven't really been able to determine specifically how this is going to, or what our responsibility for that increased amount of money. I can't answer that.
Okay.
I just don't know that. Not based on what I've heard, or certainly not based on what he's spoken about. There is a piece that a small district penalty and regional incentive. You may have heard that some of the effort, his initial effort in the plan, was to create a penalty for school districts that had fewer than 1,000 students. And I don't want to spend a lot of time on this because the superintendent's organization thinks that this is dead, that it's already dead, and that his approach of stick is not going to work. Penalizing small districts rather than providing incentives for small districts to look at ways that they can consolidate costs is the way that he should address it. So that may change, but my understanding is that that piece it's not going in. Then I wanted to, let's see, there is, obviously I'm skipping over things that I think have less of an impact to us, but again, this is a huge piece. There's a hold piece now relative to teacher certification and teacher evaluation, which will also be tied in with the renewal of certification and tenure. So, which has caused a great outcry on the part of the Connecticut Education Association. And so that's where unfortunately that's where a lot of the attention is going right now. But they have a plan, an evaluation plan that had been crafted and adopted by the State Board of Education. And that is a huge piece. That teacher evaluation, principal evaluation plan will be a huge piece of this legislation. And the fact that it's already been approved by the State Board of Education, I think, indicates that it is likely to move, that piece is likely to move forward.
And allegedly supported by
CEA?
CEA, who sat on the committee and endorsed it.
And that's where this is.
There is a history that goes back years of, though, changes on the part of the Teachers Association.
After they put something.
After they allegedly put their stamp of approval.
After their feet are held to the fire.
So again, being tonight only a summary, so there's a lot of information about teacher evaluation and how that ties in with certification and how that also ties in with renewal, tenure and renewal, and this bill does attempt to do that. This bill does attempt to look at professional teacher learning and moving away from seat time to performance-based time. So right now we get CEUs, continuing education units. Thank you.
90 hours
And,
5 years.
and so this bill would eliminate that number of hours and replace it with, new learning initiatives for teachers, and focusing a lot on site-based learning initiatives. And again, I'm just quickly summarizing this. Performance ratings, teacher performance ratings, and that's, as I said, tied in. And then non-tenured teachers and tenured teachers and termination and contract renewal language is also a piece of this legislation. And then finally, which is a huge piece and I don't completely understand, but I think this may be the most challenging piece for his plan, is that teacher salary schedules would be linked to teacher performance and not to years served in a district. And again, that makes sense, not moving people up on salary schedules just for the sake of years attained. Again, moving it away from just, you don't get advancement based on time, you get advancement based on performance. So he'd like to see that tied in with those, with his evaluation, the evaluation process. So that's where it stands right now.
One of the contracts at some point. That's all got to get.
Which that's why I think it's going to be very complicated. And then something that concerns me about this is the certification waiver for superintendents. That anybody now, that they would allow anybody with some qualifications, but not necessarily a certificate, to serve as superintendent, not just for a short period of time as they do now, but could, with appropriate performance evaluation, be able to serve as superintendent of schools.
That's the same for principals also?
Principals and teachers are linked, superintendents are different. So, I often think about how important my teaching and my building experience and the insights that I have obtained from that to understand these shifts, if you will. So I'm sure we all could have a lot of debate. So that one I want to think about and look more deeply into what his plan. And actually that was one of the things that people, and it wasn't from the superintendent because there were only 2 of us there. It was concern from teachers that you'd have non-educators leading districts. So that's where the summary is, and there's a lot of information out there. I actually have to give the governor credit for coming out and really trying to explain to the public what his bill was intended to do. So, and there's a lot of heat. I think I told Brian and Katie that I have never seen such anger in a public meeting as was expressed in Torrington a couple weeks ago.
So go ahead.
The one thing that concerns me about it with regard to New Hartford is when I hear people talk about the potential of having one principal for all of our buildings. If the evaluation process of teachers is going to be linked to their gaining tenure and their salary and so many other things, there has to be a lot of time on the part of the administrators devoted to the observation and evaluation of teachers. And every building I've ever been in, that time is really limited.
Is eaten up all the time?
Yeah.
Right.
Because a principal has a meeting scheduled with a teacher to go in and observe and evaluate and have pre-post meetings, whatever, and they get a phone call from a parent that, you know, there's some kind of crisis and that.
Well,
gets
you've
blown
never
to
heard
pieces.
from me that I felt like we could have one principal for 3
No.
buildings. In fact, I have said.
No, but I think in most districts, the opposite is gonna be true. They're gonna need more administrators to administer.
To effectively
Exactly.
execute the plans and the.
Absolutely,
Because they're so high stake
right.
relative to tenure and pay and
Right.
certification, you know, because what you'll do is you'll spin your wheels on the appeal process. So you gotta make sure that it's done and done well, and not in a hurry as sometimes as you and I both know.
Yeah.
I mean, what's
Yeah.
going to be required for any kind of a system like that to be acceptable to educators is they have to feel it's going to have a level of impartiality and consistency. And I think that's one of the areas of concern. I thought I saw in one proposal there was a potential for some peer review process incorporated in there. But, you know, it's very difficult to allay teachers' concerns that, and I don't think this is a concern that I've observed in this district, because all of your principals in the past had gone through very specific training. That was through the BEST program. So they kind of had an idea of what's good teaching. But there are other places where sometimes people get into administrative positions, particularly at the high school level, less so at the elementary level, where you know, they don't have a background in the content area to be able to judge effectively whether the physics teacher's teaching good physics. Or, so there's a myriad of issues associated with that.
Yep.
So, stay tuned, we'll be hearing a lot more.
So you think the part that deals with regionalization is really not gonna get?
That's my understanding from my association, superintendent's group, my education.
And not being a legislative person, or how would that possibly happen? That just gets, that portion of it gets shut down?
Yeah, this is going to be dissected.
There's somebody, I think,
Is that the word?
was it the CEA, wanted it to be split, each provision into separate bills, so each one could be voted up or down on its merits. I don't think that's gonna happen necessarily, but I know they were pushing for that.
And this is not a finished
Oh, God.
product.
It could go nowhere.
No. It may not go
It's a
anywhere
short
this year, and it may
legislative
be,
session.
you know.
Especially considering it's gonna require additional funding.
I think that one of the finest accountability pieces that I've ever seen, because I participated in, was the BEST program. And where did that go? Even though it was phenomenally
Yeah.
successful in weeding out marginal candidates,
A lot of districts used it.
where did it go?
Well,
It was replaced, right?
Yeah, by
Is it-
something that is very ineffective.
Okay.
but that was
If
due
you
to,
ask.
unfortunately, Teachers Association.
Well, that's what I mean. It gets, some of the very best decisions aren't necessary.
It was funding also.
It had problems, well, the legislature didn't support
Right.
I think they used that. I think they used that as an
Anyway,
excuse.
Yeah.
past history.
Anyway, so I wanted to let you know other things quickly. We're planning the Celebration of Excellence. Our community conversation group has a Celebration of Excellence planned for Saturday, June 2nd. This will be an opportunity, a free family opportunity to bring children and parents together to celebrate the successes of the past school year, the PAWS program, the STARS program, and any particular teacher successes. And we will have a wall of excellence noting the various groups that have, or the various kids that have achieved excellence. And then we're going to tie this in with a re-kickoff, if you will, of the New Hartford Education Fund, and also trying to use the New Hartford Business Association and use that, get some support from them in advertising dollars for the New Hartford Education Fund. So we're trying to do a couple of things through community conversations, and you'll be hearing more about it, but just here's the date. The date is, as I said, Saturday, June 2nd, and it's really just to be a fun day or a half day of celebrating the successes of the school.
Is that going to in any way tie in with any of our sort of celebrating our retirements?
It
of
could.
people?
It could. I mean, we could recognize.
Recognize.
Yeah.
Planning meeting on March 31st at the library. Feel free.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
I don't think I knew that.
Yeah, we should, you guys get the Friday folders? Or
Yes.
the
Yeah.
people?
It was in this one, this
It's
nice
nice.
page.
That one.
I saw the
That's
flyer.
the
Nice
letter.
flyer.
I did see that.
That's the letter that Dawn was gonna send to businesses.
I was aware of this.
But isn't that great, even as a symbol? I love
I love
love
that.
pictorial.
That's you, right?
That's
Oh, that's you. Beautiful.
I knew it when I called, I'm like, I had Marina written all over it.
All right, I wanted to share with you, you know, we really, in the past 7 years, have tried to do more coordinating efforts between the 5 superintendents in Region 7, and we recently met and rededicated ourselves to some collaborative efforts. So I just wanted to share with you a draft of just a statement that we use so we all know we're on the same page. And that is the Superintendent's Coordinating Council. We've termed it ourselves. There's no official capacity, but we want to continue our efforts to work together toward some collaborative teacher learning and teacher professional learning, and also teacher curriculum learning. I'll give you just a second there, and then I'll show you again a piece that's part of that. So we have agreed on these 3 goals at the bottom. The Common Core is a huge piece, and we want to make sure that all of our students going up to Region 7 are adequately prepared and are equally prepared, or equitably prepared with these new Common Core state standards and assessments. Technology, making sure that our kids are prepared for the technology that they are and will be using at Region 7, and then make sure that all of our teachers, whatever the new teacher evaluation plan is, that we work at it together. We don't have to do 5 separate plans. Perhaps we work as a collaborative group and come up with a collaborative plan. So toward that end, goal number one was the Common Core state standards. I didn't copy this because again it's 45 pages. This is an indication. I'll pass it around. So we have this language arts curriculum that we wrote 3 years ago. Well, we have already begun to take that document and create, merge it, if you will, with the new Common Core state standards. So this is just the kindergarten language arts, so we'll be writing, reading, speaking, and listening. And it's a draft document, but it will be something that we want to have completely drafted by April. So what we have done is, this group has met. They've met several times this winter and early spring. I call it summer. So kindergarten is done. Now we're bringing it back to all the 4 districts, having a chance for the kindergarten document to be looked at to make sure that everybody's on board with the way it looks and how it's set up. And then that group is going to pull back and very quickly complete grades 1 through 6. And then they're going to do that for math as well. And our goal is to get that done this year. So it's a huge task, but again, if we want our kids prepared for 2014, we need to move. And a part of me, there's a voice in the back that says, well, the state hasn't told you what you should be doing yet. We aren't waiting around. And we know that we're going to be assessed for this, and we're looking at some of the successes that other states have already achieved, Ohio being one of them. And we looked at what they have prepared, so we've adopted and used some of their work with their permission in creating our own document. So I'm just gonna pass that around and take a look at it. And then very quickly, the school's radon tests have been completed, and all 3 schools have results that meet, or actually, there's no radon detected in any of the 3 buildings by these. And this is one of those state mandates. Every 5 years, we've got to do this test. So we're done now for 5 years. All right. Longer than you even thought it was going to be.
Said legislative update.
Yeah.
A little bit more. All right, we don't have a billing report, so we're going to move to routine business, the approval of minutes for the March 6th meeting. I just have one comment on the first page, and it's under the superintendent's report. Number 2, or the second line, where it says to discuss Act 24. I think we should put Senate Bill 24, because that's what it is.
SB
Senate Bill
24.
In that same line, I've got a couple things. After Senator Which goes, will hold an open forum, so take out B and forum. Forum. Okay.
Any other changes or modifications?
Motion to approve
Oh.
minutes?
Sorry.
No, we.
Okay, just making sure there wasn't a name I didn't know about. On the second page, under old business, magnet school update, it says, you have magnet with an E before school.
All right.
State Department
An
of Education
all-powerful
Party
person.
magnet. I wasn't sure it was, making it extra, yeah.
Yeah.
I couldn't find it in my dictionary, so. Yeah.
Okay, Katie, you're in the middle of a
Sorry.
motion.
Make a motion to approve the minutes of Tuesday, March 6th as amended with small amendments or corrections.
Second?
Motion by Katie, second by Elaine. Any further discussion? All those in favor? We have Melissa. Elaine, are you raising your hand? Elaine, Katie. Melissa, Elaine, Katie, Maria, and myself. All those opposed? Abstentions? And 1 abstention. Just trying to make sure I had all the people here correctly. We don't have a personnel report, and we don't have an expenditure report, so we did that last meeting, so we're going to move to the next item, our opportunity of public comment. Any public comments? Okay. The next item is communications to the board. I think we all received the letter from Roxanne Health. It's here this evening. I will introduce that letter into the record, so I have a copy here if you want mine, or we can pick up another one, so.
I need it for the book.
Yeah. You want it?
Is that your own copy? 'Cause
I can give you mine.
Okay. It is a topic we're going to be talking about a little later in the meeting too, so thanks for being here. The next item on our agenda is the curriculum, which we don't have a report there either, so we'll move to the new business. First item is the communicating safety article that was passed out last meeting.
No, I had everything prepared. Now it's just that I've shifted everything, so I've lost it.
How many meetings left, any breaks?
Philip, there's extra copies along the way.
No, I know, but
I
I
have a
had
copy
everything
too.
together, because I also brought other things to support that discussion. You can start it, because I think it's, Melissa can talk a little bit about why she brought it forward.
Melissa, you want to
You're the
hear the discussion on this?
Yeah, let's,
I got it.
oh, you got it?
I know, because it has policy stuff.
All right, well, this was brought up because of our conversations in the months sort of before the board even changed with some of the new members. We had incident in the school, there was a lot of concern about communication, and policy reviews, and it was this board that decided to have the policy subcommittee look at our policies to determine if things need to be changed, if we need to just refresh on policies that are out there that we're not really up to date on. And we did all that. A lot of that changed with the bullying policy and the discipline policy, which we'll be looking at. But what we found, and I mentioned in the last meeting, was a lot of the policy doesn't speak specifically to communicating and how we communicate safety and the things that we do in the town that the school district does do. We just might not communicate about what is being done and how that should be done. I did compare to a lot of the surrounding towns, including some of the ones that were with regional or the feeder towns. Just some of the surrounding towns, like bigger ones like Farmington, to compare because they have a bigger school district. I looked at all their policies online if they were available, and most towns are doing what we're doing. They're not putting specific policies out there stating word for word how they're going to communicate on everything that goes on, because it's just impossible to consider every option, and everything that happens is going to have to be on a basis situation. So what I did find some towns were doing was trying to be a little bit more effective with their communication. And then I just searched in this article, I just could not, I mean, it was basically just got us going, gave us a place to start talking. And the other thing I was going to bring up in our policy meeting, and we can discuss it then and maybe move forward, but I actually got my brother actually forwarded me a letter from his school district, because it said to the parents, with all the things going on around the country, the superintendent in their school district wanted to just state a letter and just remind parents of the things that they do, to take precautions, reminding them about fire drills that go on, lockdowns that go on, not the detail, that we need to keep private for the safety of our students, but just remind parents that these things go on and that they are doing them, and if they have any concerns or questions, to contact the school. And it was just a nice, a nice bit of communication that he and I just happened to be talking about during the holidays, and so when he got it, he thought, let me send it out, just because it was something that was interesting. And I found it to be a bit of information that we might want to just consider looking at as a model. And this article, I think, there's a lot of things in here that, I kind of laugh about, because there's things that anybody would just do, and they're saying maybe you shouldn't, don't act that way. But it's human instinct to say some of the things that they say here might be a little bit condescending sometimes. So this was supposed to just help to get us started.
So I wanted to, the thing that I took from the article was one of the bullets that they have, because I do think a lot of the things that we're doing is the crisis communication plan. There are aspects of that crisis communication plan that are highlighted in our Safe School plan. I didn't copy it, but here's what here's the cover, so you get a sense of it. And we could look more carefully at it, but I just, again, unless the board wanted to go down. Every couple of years, I will sit down with the building principals, as well as, in the past, Jim Farkas, who is the town emergency management director. And we review the plan and update it, as we did this past fall. And so I wanted to share with you the fact that it's 35 pages. Here's the table of contents. And so it's, who's on the safety team, who's on the building safety team, who's on the, what do we do for building evacuation, for total security, for security situations, for bomb threats, for fire evacuation, emergency flow chart. All this information is here, as Melissa has indicated. So communicating that is created, I think, is the point that you are making, that we could do that, even though in our handbook it says that there's a safety school plan, policy 6114, and there's even policies that are related to that. So it even though it does say that we have a safe school plan, perhaps something more specific relative to, as you said, that superintendent wanted to just put everyone at ease that, you know, we have these plans in place.
Is that on our website, the plan itself? Not
Well,
the
that's
policy?
actually, that's a recommendation that we would, not, the plan itself isn't, but maybe something on our webpage that addresses school safety and sort of encapsulate, or just encompasses the, you know, or summarizes what we do.
Could we include the safe school plan on our website? Is there a reason not to?
Yes. We don't want, because it has
Oh,
details as
yeah,
to what we
where
do
the
with
kids would
kids,
go, right.
and we don't really want to
Yeah.
publicize
Yeah,
that.
you
We
don't
might
want
be
all the
able to, like-
lockdown
yeah,
procedures out
exactly.
there.
Right.
We might be able to like go through and point out some, use it, we talked about using it as a guideline to make sure we hit each point to let
Right.
parents know all the things that are being covered.
Yep.
But, and I have been very vocal about my feelings on the importance of communicating. And when I started looking at this document, the last thing I would want is this document out there for anybody to see, because we've got it covered. It's like Philip was just saying, we need to talk about how we're gonna communicate to let parents know it's covered, but giving that information, there's no way to control that. And to have it in the wrong hands would be a disaster.
It's kind of like, you know, releasing a floor plan with all the burglars.
Exactly.
Right.
Yeah.
Might as well give your
Noted.
security code right on
The
that, yeah.
security code, how to get in
There
the
it
building.
is,
If you need
exactly.
to get in the building at night, this is the security code.
Right.
You don't do that.
Okay, makes sense. Yeah, no, good job. I mean, one point that I just want to make about this article that they don't really get into, just one little blurb, is just, you know, where FERPA will kick in, and I think it's a balance with that. And I want, you know, that's a pretty important statute that I think we just, you know, it's a balancing act here to try to do that.
Where is that? Is that?
It doesn't even call it
Right, it doesn't
FERPA. It
refer
just says
to
that, you know, divulge details that violate student
Oh, I
privacy
see.
rights.
Yeah.
You know, one out of this whole, you know, 3-page article, there's just one little sentence regarding that, but I think that's kind of glossed over, quite frankly. I think that's a much more important than what is given in this article. I'm not saying the article's not good, but I just think that it's just missing that aspect of it. So I think it is a balancing act we have to constantly do, and as you point out, Melissa, you can't take every situation and try to come up with a policy that says this is what it's gonna be, because you're not gonna be able to predict every situation.
So what I'd like to propose is that I would write that summary with my building principals and with Sarah, and that we bring it to the board for approval.
Through the
or
policy
at least-
subcommittee, or?
No, I don't
Just
even
do
think
it
it's,
before-
because it's really not a policy, it
Yeah.
really is an administrative response, you know, it's sort of a response to the policies that we already have. We, I think, want to look at the policies, because I think they're not necessarily aligned, as we see now as we're going back for a second run on our existing policies. We're learning that, well, some of these aren't really necessary, one, and two, they really don't address what we want them to address. So if you wanted to make it, if the board decided to make that summary a policy, that's fine. But let me just see if I can draft out what you were, and if you as a board think that it's something that you would like to see on the website, then we put it on there, or if it's something that you'd like to create a policy out of, then the policy subcommittee would take it.
Now, what is the rule regarding the bullying policy? Are we state mandated to put it on our website?
Yes, we are.
On the main page, like
Yes,
is
we
there?
are.
Okay, I
Yes, we
remember you mentioned that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because that information is available as a CAVE policy.
Right.
But as far as putting it on our main site, I
It's
found
gotta
a
be linked
few
there.
schools that had a section on their main site that said, you know, whether it was safety or it had like a little section, and right there it had a few policies. There was another article actually the state of Connecticut put out, it's on the state's website, that they put on there too, which helps parents with the, I don't know, there was a question type of way of doing things, or myths, or it was the way they wrote it, it was a state document, which
I
I think was
think a
helpful.
lot of districts frankly just took the policy from Shipman and Goodman.
Yeah, they
and
did.
put it on there to meet the expectations
Yeah, they
of
did.
the
'Cause I
law.
compared
They
some
didn't
and it
take
was
the
word for
time
word.
that
Yeah.
this district did to look at
Yeah.
it carefully and make sure it
I
worked
agree.
for us.
But now we need to,
So now we obviously,
oh, we
with
get one
tonight's
more reading.
assumed
Tonight's
approval, it will go up immediately.
Okay.
Yep. Okay, very good.
So is that okay
Yes.
with the board for me
I
to
think that makes
do
sense.
something?
Yep.
And then I'll probably run it by you first.
Yeah, I'd be happy
you
to
don't
read
mind.
it. Yeah, and I just want to say at the end of this topic is, As far as my standpoint on this, and I hope that, you know, we all agree, I'm looking at this as, in general, you know, communicating safety, because even before, when I first moved here a few years ago, it was, you know, do we lock the doors, do we put a security system in? I think this is just something that we've needed to discuss for a while, so I'm looking at it as general safety of the school, not necessarily because there was an incident, but in general, you know, what are we doing? Are we doing everything right? Are we communicating it right? I think if we keep it more of, you know, are we doing the right things, and make sure we're doing the right things, and I don't want to get it focused on a result of something. I'd rather it just be our initiative to do the right thing. Is what I'm trying to say. If that makes sense.
Okay. The next item on the agenda is the ratification of contracts that Katie stepped out, so maybe we'll table that for a moment and go back to it after we talk about the 2012-2013 school calendar. Philip made a note, I don't, did you note in here? I don't remember. Regional has changed their calendar, and they're now going to be attending school on Veterans Day. And which is something I brought up last meeting, is being in favor of.
I didn't click it because I did the thing earlier
It was
last
earlier
week.
than that, okay.
And then they
Because
voted.
the email came later? Yeah, okay. And just to give you a summary of what, you know, what you can do during those days, this comes from Tom Moody's School Board Guide book. School may be held on a holiday provided that the school hold a suitable non-sectarian educational program observance of such holiday. So I guess the point is that if we go on Veterans Day, is to make sure that we have an appropriate program that deals with the educational needs dealing with veterans. And it's something that we did last year.
Well, we certainly do at Antonini with Sheila's program, and then Steve, because we met, or school was in session on Veterans Day, he planned a couple of small events at each of the two buildings, and we would obviously continue to do that.
But the Angelini program was only the 4th graders.
Well, we'd have to think about.
So we'd have to do a school, that would have to be.
I'm telling you, 3rd graders attended that, because I was there, and my son was sitting in the front, so at least one grade.
Oh, maybe.
So maybe just the 3rd graders.
We'd have to consider how we could do that.
Yeah.
Maybe there would be an internal, you know, school-wide thing as well as a open to the public thing.
But obviously, we change our curriculum a little bit to accommodate this for all grade levels. First, I'm in favor, and I just want to make clear, it's no disrespect to the veterans at all. I my support of this. I want to make clear that it's not, in no way, actually, I'd like to say that it is out of respect to the veterans that they're there that particular day, so that there is an observance, and our curriculum is catered to that particular holiday, and it actually is a concerted effort to make sure that every grade level is receiving some education based on that. You know, I mean, so I know it may be a touchy subject for some veterans, but I just want to make, from my perspective, it's not out of disrespect at all. It's actually out of respect that I think that the kids should be there to, you know, learn about this. So,
But, I mean, I'm going to cut you off, sorry.
no, go ahead.
I agree with the education on Veterans Day, but it can happen on a different day, like it's been happening for years. I don't know, I just find that the veterans that aren't gonna come into the school, you know, I know a few veterans, I have in my family, and the quality time they like to spend with their families on that day, is important to them, and so that would hurt me personally. That's all I'm saying. I'm not taking any disrespect from what you're saying, and I agree that they should learn about it, but I'm just thinking of, you know, like my personal experience with my father-in-law, who is like 80% disabled because of the war. He likes to spend that day with family to remind him of, you know, what he did and the reason for it. And I just don't want to take away from that. And that's why I think that may be disrespectful. No, sorry, I don't need to be direct.
No,
It's not
I mean,
mean to
it's,
be
you know,
attacking what you're saying.
not at all. I mean, it's a type of thing that
It's a hard topic.
if you get across, you know, if I just, just get across that there is no disrespect intended. Do you mean in terms of people the veterans coming to school for that particular assembly that takes place for fourth graders?
No, I mean,
Because that could take
yeah.
place a different day.
Well, we could, I know that the school would always be open when the veterans come in and everything. I'm just saying, my specific situation is the veterans in my family. I was always like, oh, it's Veterans Day, we don't do anything. And my husband and I were talking, and we have veterans in our family. So we said, well, this is a nice day, because when the veterans came home from Vietnam, my father-in-law, they were disrespected because of the fact that people were against the war. And it was a long time in his life before he felt appreciated for what he did. And so seeing the younger generation spending time with them on that day is what now gives him comfort. So for me, I might actually not put my kids in school that day, just to not take away from his time. So I'm wondering, will people see it as, instead of us respecting them by learning about it that day, taking away from the fact that the veterans like to get actual, I don't know how to say, hands-on, appreciation, exactly,
So-
that day. I know, there's
You're never
talking
gonna make
circles.
everyone happy.
Exactly.
Right? I mean, someone's gonna be upset by whatever the decision is made. I mean, from my personal perspective, my daughter came home, and because they were going to school on Veterans Day, she had to call my father and ask him what war he was in and what he did in the Army.
Yep.
And that, touched him more than, I don't know, anything has in many years. So
It created
sitting
a
at the same
positive,
table, it's
exactly.
like, it's,
I know.
it's almost like we just have to make a decision.
And I think it's
Support
what
it.
the reality out there, but we generally try to create a calendar that is the same. It isn't exact, but
Right.
generally we try. You could do this as you did with, I think, a day in October, if I remember. That's different. So, but just know that Region 7, we do try to align our calendar with Region 7 as much as we can.
And was their whole, they approved their calendar and they brought it up again, was it specific to creating celebrations in the school? We don't, just
So we just got an
wondering.
email from Judy Palmer, right? Did you get
Right.
the
We had
rationale
our
behind it?
superintendent's meeting last week. Believe it or not, we all talked about it, we all agreed that Veterans Day was gonna be a holiday, but that if the board of, Region 7 board somehow decided not to have it as a holiday, that we would all follow in suit or make that recommendation to our boards of ed, because it's really your decision. Judy said she did not think her board was going to do that, so.
Did you talk to her since? I mean, was there a discussion
No,
as to the
I didn't.
rationale behind it?
I didn't talk to her about rationale, no.
Based on what this board, they're gonna have a different day in October off. They have a day we don't have.
I think that's the one difference.
Yeah, that's what we just talked about, they have a professional development day.
All right, so I think we need to make a decision and approve the calendar. So does anyone want to make a motion concerning that?
I make a motion that we accept the New Hartford Public Schools school calendar for 2012-2013, including a day of school for November 12th.
Okay.
I'll second it.
Motion from Elaine, second by Josh. Any further discussion? Are you going to say something else?
That's the,
Yep,
this
yep,
is the old
yep.
one.
All those in favor? We have Elaine, Sue, Josh, Maria, and myself. All opposed? This is opposed. The motion carries. That's our calendar. All right, thank you. Katie is,
She had to leave for a family emergency.
okay, so is that something we can table for another evening, or is that something we need to take up now?
We have a couple of, we have another board member here, I know Steve
Josh
is
is on
here. And Josh is on it, and you all have had the opportunity to look, if you wanted to, at the tentative agreement, so, unless there's specific questions, I think you have your full subcommittee support for adoption of these contracts.
Okay. So should we take them up separately, or do them as one?
I don't think that matters.
Okay.
It's your feel like a more clear, separate.
Okay. So it's the secretaries, the tutors, and the custodians. Does anyone want to make a motion concerning those 3 contracts?
I'll make a motion to ratify the secretary's contract for, I don't know what the time's.
They're all July 1st, 2011, so they're retro.
Right.
So they're 4-year contracts starting July 1st, 2011.
All right, beginning July 1st, 2011.
You're just doing one. We're gonna do it one at a time?
Okay.
Okay. I second it.
Okay. Motion by Sue, second by Elaine. Any further discussion? All those in favor? Unanimous?
Motion to ratify the contract dated July 1st, 2011 for the parents and the tutors. Proper.
As long as we put 4-year contract beginning July.
4-year contract starting July 1st, 2011.
Okay. Motion.
Second.
Motion by Maria, second by Sue.
That's fine.
Further discussion? All those in favor? Unanimous? And the last one, custodians?
Make a motion that we ratify the contract, the 4-year contract beginning July 1st, 2011 for the custodians.
Motion by Sue,
Second.
second by Elaine. Any further discussion? All those in favor? Unanimous again? Great job to that group of personnel subcommittee with all these contracts. They've done a really outstanding job.
No, they're all aligned come up and at the same time, which I think is something you want to do.
I think it's not only the timing of the contract, I think the bodies of what's in the contracts are
Absolutely.
actually kind of aligned too,
Yep.
so
Yep.
it's really,
Leads the way.
you've done a great job there. All right, we just took up the calendar, so now we're going to, the next item is the budget. I'm not sure we really had a lot of discussion concerning the budget. Steve,
You know, I went to the Board of Finance the other night. I thought that it went relatively well. You know, they asked a lot of pointed questions about various lines. Thank you to the board members who were there. And so you obviously, there's a number of you that obviously heard it. I continually hear that you'd like something more specific, that both boards, members of the Board of Finance and the Board of Ed would like something more specific relative to the technical equipment line. So I worked with my technical administrative group to do that. So I'm going to pass it out to you. And I'm going to reiterate to you that this is your decision. So if you want to change the allocations based on the assumptions that I gave you back in February, you may do that. Or you can accept these as preliminary, and that, you know, if there's change in the plan, obviously I would come before you, but this is my preliminary assessment as to how I would use that money. And it is based on the technology proposals that were given to you on February 28th. There's nothing new here.
Questions. Mimios.
Yes.
Is that the smart board, the thing that goes on the whiteboard?
It's not a smart board,
It creates
right,
it? Okay.
exactly,
And then
yeah.
the document reader is the thing that you put
Correct.
the paper under and it throws it on the screen?
Right.
Okay. Just want to make
So-
sure I didn't have those
Can I-
two reversed.
I plead ignorance and ask for a better explanation of what a Mimeo is.
It's an interactive presentation device, so
Okay.
that kids are actually interacting with the whiteboard.
Oh, okay.
And the device that projects,
Okay,
it's like a computerized board.
okay, okay, I got it.
All right?
They go up and they can touch
Right.
spots.
They can write on it, they can,
Some of the more senior members had some demonstrations in the past. So.
they're pretty cool.
Spot on. And subbing, absolutely.
So they're replacing Bakerville Lab with mobile laptops. Again, this is based on the proposal that I gave you before, where we are looking at removing the existing computers in the lab now that are 5, 6, 7 years old, putting them into the classrooms, but then having a mobile lab that would have a dual purpose. One for the Library Media Center with our Library Media Specialist, but that also could be used by the classroom teachers. so it has a dual purpose. So in other words, these devices aren't sitting in a library media center not being used. If their class hasn't, if a library media class isn't using them, then a classroom teacher has the ability to use them, so they have dual purpose.
So with this proposal, there won't be a lab, computers, desktop computers, I'll say, at Bakerville or New Hartford Elementary?
There will not be desktop computers
In a
at
lab.
Bakerville.
Oh,
I
this
think
is not
New
happening in
Hartford's
New
would
Hartford.
stay, because again, we don't have full funding of this, so
Okay.
I split it, because remember, the proposal was that we do that in both elementary schools.
Okay,
But the administrative and technology team felt, you know, we want to get as much out of this, as I tried to explain before.
Okay.
There's a lot of priorities here.
Right.
And so we've taken a bit from each priority and tried to put a dollar amount to each of those important priorities.
and I have another question, that this, I have no background, I was gonna look into it, but a desktop with a keyboard versus a laptop with the laptop keyboard, do we know how that works with the kids? I know, like, I have a wireless keyboard which works out really nice for little hands. I saw, we have a laptop at Bakerville because of one of the computers needed to replace a desktop. And I see, you know, the mouse getting used and the keyboard, it just seems a little bit more cumbersome.
The desktop.
The laptop. So
I would have
is there
said the
any,
opposite, but.
so, is it a, you know, I'm thinking the mouse and the keyboard, is that better for a younger grade versus, I know laptops at the older grades, it's not a issue. Is that something that's been ever brought up, that it's easier for kids to use desktop with the keyboards and the mouse
I would think
versus?
we would want to address that with, particularly with Lori Andrada, who, you know, is part of the team that created this. So I'm only assuming that she doesn't have that concern. So I have an opinion, but it's only opinion. It's not, I don't, it's an opinion that laptops
I'm
are
thinking
easier.
of like literally, like, you know, when they're typing, because they're gonna start doing more typing, my understanding, at the younger grade, and the laptop has the space, you know, with your hands. I don't know, we have big hands, so I'm not,
I guess
do you know?
expressing some of the current concerns that I'd like to raise as well with ergonomics and
Okay.
these new, what we're calling them, mobile labs or whatever. Laptops are about the worst ergonomic setup that you can have. They're horrible for your arms, your wrists, your neck, your back. So, if, you know, you put them on your lap,
Right,
like
right.
this, you can set them up such that they're not, but
Right.
that needs to be looked at. Mice for third, fourth graders are
Right.
too big. So smaller mice for smaller
Yeah.
hands are a good thing. But, and I'm only speaking from, you know, reiterating information that I've received, that I've read. So I'd like to see us put some sort of effort into understanding
Right.
how the kids are getting impacted.
Yeah, I'm wondering about it, because even like the screen, I know I go I'm in the library like now it's not every Friday, but at least 3 or 4 Fridays every month with the kids. And I'm moving a lot of screens up because they're sitting there and they're punching over, they're not sitting right, and I'm telling them to sit down. So I'm just thinking a laptop, you know, they're already gonna be this low, you know, unless we prop them up. But then it's not, if they're mobile, that's not gonna be really an option. And I'm solely thinking about this, I should say, on like the K-2 level, I'm thinking just the younger kids. Although, I mean, I'm not completely against new technology for the labs, for the classrooms. I'm just wondering, is the laptop necessarily the proper equipment for that young age? Not to say that I'm right, I'm wondering.
Is that something you want to run by, Lori? You think it's worth?
Well, I think what Josh had said relative to ergonomics, at least would make us create an environment that addressed what research may have already come out and said. And so, you know, I don't think you're saying one is better than the other right now. I think what you're saying is that you need to make sure that you take the proper, you create an environment that doesn't strain kids.
Either
they're
will
not on the
work
lap, they're on.
if set up
I think
appropriately.
Exactly, right. I
Ergonomically,
mean,
we want to make
I've
sure,
set up
obviously we want,
computers where, you know, they weren't ergonomically correct, you do have to take the efforts to make sure that they're the
We're
right
not
eye
gonna take
level.
tables away out of the library
Right.
media centers. We're not gonna take
No, they're not
desks
gonna-
away from
right.
classrooms so kids
Actually
are
be
at
sitting
desks
on
with
our
feet on the
laps.
floor, you know, we
Right.
don't.
Right, so
But
if they're sitting, maybe, if
Right,
they're,
but I
well,
think
they
that's
can be
part of
propped
the
up,
learning.
yeah, we'll have to.
Josh
work
had
through.
mentioned it to me a couple of meetings ago, so I think that it merits future,
Right.
uh,
I mean, I know the mouse alone might be a positive because of the constant plugging, unplugging with the mouse not working, it being right there might be better,
What,
so
what I
there's probably
continue
some
to hear
positives.
increasing support of is how easy the touch keyboard, the touch stuff is for kids, the iPads or the template computers are for kids because it's all touch-based. That I keep hearing.
I know NewHart Health Center has some research areas. I don't know if they're doing anything looking at children's ergonomics, but if they were, that might be an opportunity to get some free support.
So can you run through and just explain a little bit more what these things are? I know, you know,
Well,
not too details, Ron. I mean, I know the wireless you said was answering, right, to the
Yep.
Wi-Fi network?
And the outsourcing the cloud computing, if you remember Power School in Alexandria, that was, again, these come from
Right.
that. The replacement cycle for staff, proposal number 5, gradual replacement cycle for staff computers.
So they're
You know, so
laptops.
we've done the tech leaders now, so now we do 10 more.
Now, are these the laptops that are, you say staff, maybe you don't know this right now, is this mostly the teachers with the laptops that they're using in the classroom? Or this could be any staff member?
It's the laptop that has been assigned to every single certified teacher in our school district.
I know, but you
So
have,
some of them use it in
10.
their classroom, some of them, it's their personal use, you know,
Okay.
they're on their grades or whatever on. You know, that's how they communicate,
okay.
they take it home.
So I guess I want to make, one of my priorities, I'd say personally, is to make sure that the laptop that the staff, the teachers, the classroom teachers are using are up to date. I've heard some classroom teachers, you know, it's slow, there was problems. I would
That's
like
why
to
we're
see.
doing this.
No, but I guess, no, I'm saying is, focus is, if there's 10 we're talking about here, my focus would be the ones that are actually classroom laptops. So maybe you have, maybe I'm not clarifying.
Yeah.
So you have, I don't know, another faculty member that has a laptop, but they're not working with a classroom. So we're talking a second grade teacher who uses a laptop with students in the class, 22, 23 students. If that laptop with that teacher is out of date versus the laptop for somebody who's only using it to do grading or something else. That would prioritize one working with the students over the other one. So I'm looking for an additional priority. I don't personally like when I hear that there was stumbling going on in the classroom or a problem because the laptop wasn't working well. I think we need to, that's where I'd like to see put the money in, because that's where it's affecting class time and teaching personally.
Just going back to the replace the Bakerville lab, I think initially we were talking about sort of the top-down thing, maybe starting at the top and moving some of the Angelini computers down. Is there still a way to tap into that and get the latest and greatest technology for the?
Until we come to us, if I understand your question, I'm just going to say, until we resolve 5th and 6th grade usage, device usage, we can't. We want to make sure that the usage is equitable, and when every child has the opportunity to use a web browser-based device, then we'll begin that plan of moving things down.
I guess I'm just not even getting to that. I was just more thinking that, are there computers in Antolini that may take your priority because to replace them in a, to get the latest and greatest technology for those, and then move, instead of buying the new ones for Bakerville, and moving some Antolini computers down for this purpose. Is there a way to effectuate that, or is that just not really where the needs are at this point.
I think her point should indicate that there are needs everywhere. And it's pretty hard to say that this is more important than that, although obviously the point is those that are used most by teachers for instructional purposes, obviously that's what we want to get to. So,
But I'm talking about those Bakerville lab you have there, mobile laptops.
well, we've had this on the agenda to replace for a couple of years. It's been tabled twice, the budgetary reason.
I guess what I'm trying to get to, maybe I'm not making myself clear, is just that, if we bought these computers and we that.
Are they the highest need?
No, I'm just saying, is it, should they be going up, I guess the thing is, should they be going to Antolini instead, and whatever's in Antolini then be shifting down to Bakerville, I guess, just because they're little kids with little electronic, technical needs.
Do they need the latest and greatest
Well, I
versus,
think
and I
that we
kind of agree
have
with that.
crossed the point where there's a lot, that was the purpose of this inventory that I gave you, so you can see that every place has some pretty old devices.
But isn't it also easier with the smaller kids to have the mobile laptops?
Well, we talked about that, we're gonna
Yeah.
look into that, yeah.
Maybe, no, probably not.
See, I
Little
think what you're
everything
doing,
shifting around.
but that's what I tried to do by the proposal piece,
Yeah.
is to sort of say, these are the directions, because the need is so great that we just, it's not just a one plug is gonna solve it all. So I attempted to then prioritize these in a further way, which, again, you could change, but this is based on my discussion with principals and Linda, the data management coordinator, and our IT specialist, and then our 2 library media specialists. When we reassign a device, I might add, I don't get into that. That's for building principals to decide with the IT specialist and the library media specialist to determine where the greatest need is. So they typically, they will have a discussion as part of our sub-meeting is, okay, we've got these new devices, where's the priority? And then we try to fill as many voids as we can.
Are these tablets defined?
No, because we haven't defined them. I mean, we have Apples now, but, things are changing regularly.
Are we buying apples? We're buying Microsoft products.
We're buying Apples,
iPads,
Apple iPads.
But
What I mean for
computers,
like
we
the
don't have
mobile
the Apple, right?
laptops and stuff.
We haven't yet, but I personally would like us to see us at least look into that, and that's why we have been experimenting a little.
They're pricey.
They are pricey, but they're nice.
Double.
I have both in my house, and I can see the benefits of Apple.
My son has had a computer, all of my college kids have had non-Apple devices. None of them has ever got out of college without having to replace something major in their laptop.
Oh, yeah, I
Except
crash
the
constantly.
one now that.
But they're expensive.
Is there
My
a
father used to say,
program
"Get
where
what
you
you pay
can
for."
do a lease? Are
We
they
would look into
upgrade
that.
them?
We would
Yeah,
look in-
where
we
you
would
can
look into
lease
that. I
them
thought
and
that was a really
upgrade
good
them every
idea.
certain years?
When
as
I met
part
with
of
the
the
staff,
agreement?
we looked at, there's a lot of ways, and we talked about how we get more devices in schools. And then when I met and did a presentation to the staff, I thought there were some reasonable ideas to research relative to people that want to donate, maybe things that are still working well, or ways that we can go after, as Katie said, grants or other funding mechanisms for that. But this is simply to answer your question more specifically, what would the money be used for? This is what I would recommend that we use it for.
So this does not cover, though, doing this handheld device type thing for the 5th and 6th grades?
Not directly, no, it doesn't.
It's maybe getting you set up in a way for that.
It doesn't
Future.
purchase more devices for those grade levels at this time.
Does this add up to the 35 plus 23?
Roughly, but it's a little bit over, I think.
Now, what is this, the outsourced cloud computing? That's to put Power School and Alexandria on cloud?
Yes.
It's like as our backup? Oh, no, explain it,
Yeah, I
I just
talked about
learned
it last time.
cloud personally.
Yeah, but instead
Cloud's
of,
a little cloudy.
It is cloudy, it is.
instead of buying our own server,
Right,
we are outsourcing it to the cloud, to an off-site server.
okay, but technically that serves as our backup too, because if you can draw it down from the cloud,
It's their
it's
responsibility
there all the
to
time,
back
is
it
what you're
up.
saying, so
Yes.
we wouldn't have a server.
Right, for those
That's the
purposes.
difference, okay,
Board of Selectmen.
Like right now, we don't have an email server anymore.
right. It's in the cloud.
It's in the cloud.
Now, what are these numbers? Is this what we're gonna be paying? This is what
That's
we're
the
paying right
savings.
now? Oh, the savings, Right.
Should say, that's the net cost, I'm sorry, the net, no, the cloud computing is in red.
okay,
The black is what we currently spend now on a yearly basis. Because we have to purchase the software on a yearly basis, you know.
so this is gonna cost us more for the cloud?
It is gonna cost us
Okay.
more.
I just wanna
Yeah.
make sure I'm reading this right.
But again, we don't have to worry about it.
Right, I
What's
get
not
the
in here is
benefits
the
of the
cost of a server.
Okay,
That's a year.
and maintenance of the server, and,
You're
I believe it
replacing the
is, yes.
server,
It says it, yeah. Yeah.
and then the server crashes.
and does the cloud crash ever? Get rainy?
Cloud's brand new, we don't really know.
Yeah,
That's,
It could all fall.
right, that's what
that's my
worries
concern
me.
with going to cloud, is just a little bit, it's just,
Okay,
So that, we're doing it slowly,
yeah.
doing it slowly.
I have one last question, but it's not really on this document. It was on, like, you gave us this, right,
Yeah.
meetings ago? I understand how this is, but do we have detail, like, this says there's four, for example, there's 4 computers that were purchased in 2002, a classroom, a server. Do we have specific, more specific to every computer? No, not right now,
Yes.
but do you have an inventory
Yes.
of what? Okay, I'd like to see where we're at, because some of these are pretty dated. And I mean,
established.
I know that, but no one else might see, well, no one's real here, but some of these, I mean, 2001, we're talking, that's over 10, I have a computer that's like 5 years old and I'm ready to, it's not even useful for a paperweight. So 10 years old is,
Well, I think this may be helpful to actually
Yes.
include this, or at least this preliminary inventory with some of the discussions that we're gonna have, questions before the Board of Finance, as we're looking at
Understood.
replacing, is to say, look, we'll look at some of these
Right.
computers that we are looking to phase out, so.
And I think that the Board of Finance is looking for you to defend that, so you
well, that's why
have
I'd
the
like,
documents
yeah,
now to be able
that's
to.
why if I'd like to see the more detail, because I thought maybe we could make this a little bit meatier, to prove the point personally. I'll look at that and talk to you about it.
Okay, moving on, we're gonna get, the next item on our agenda is the capital plan. I don't think there's really much to talk about there. We did present it to the Board of Finance. It seemed to me that the discussions were going along the lines of that, the Angelini Windows and Doors project would be a bonded project, that would take place maybe 2 years from now, instead of being paid out of this year's capital, so there's no final decisions on that, but that just seemed to be where the direction the conversations were going the other night, coupled with perhaps a roof project up there too, so we'll see where that goes, but that's where it currently stands.
Brian, I had a question though. On that, some of those documents, did we review these? It's like one of this says asbestos abatement pipes. Did that get done? And it says 11, 12, 200,000. Did you, one of these documents, I didn't,
This would have, I mean,
That was
Steve would have been
even out
involved
of the
with,
meeting.
right, Steve would have been around with some of these things. This is a,
There's an awful lot of numbers.
Yeah.
yeah, so I'm a little,
And they're
I'm
not all,
just confused.
and what complicates it is that they may or may not, they may be coming from reports that are quite dated. You know,
Right.
because in my tenure of 7 years, we've done 2 separate reports. But, there are, what it is that the fittings, I think we've discussed this before, have asbestos elbows and
Right.
with,
Because he had said what's way up in the ceiling,
Above the-
untouched,
above
wasn't
the-
done, right. But I don't know why, I just am concerned that the reports that are being distributed aren't necessarily reflecting what, I'm not saying they're inaccurate, but maybe like you said, they're a little, information might be outdated or.
I know Kate made that point.
Yeah.
yes, because I made it to Kate,
Right.
and she's requested many of
Well,
these things
she
from
was there
reports.
when these things,
Yeah.
she
Right.
was saying that they asked people for the library to come back so many times that they wouldn't even come back, because they kept asking.
For a new quote, and, you know,
Right.
so yeah, the numbers aren't gonna be exact there. Some of the, you know, that correct report, I think it was '07. Well, that's 5 years ago, so how valid are
Right.
those numbers?
But I mean, even the years, you know, that year, that it didn't happen, it's not happening, so maybe it should be another year, so to make sure.
Well, I don't
that-
think any of those years, I wouldn't put a lot of stock in those. I
Okay.
think they were just trying to get a semblance of, you know, where these things could fit in, but, you know, I don't think there's anything decided about the capital yet.
Okay.
So
Oh, yeah, I agree.
what I
I
can
didn't get that
envision is
impression.
that we are not doing the windows and doors, but we are giving us a certain allotment of money to do some of these other smaller projects. That's what I envision happening here, so. I think we'll just kind of take that as it comes. And by the way, there is a Board of Finance special meeting. We sent out the email this Thursday that we're going to get into more detailed discussions about all the budgets in town. So I highly recommend any and all Board of Education members to attend that meeting.
This Thursday, as in 2 days?
Yes.
Okay.
7 o'clock.
So I got an agenda and I'll forward it to everyone else. Next item on our agenda is our recently passed acceptable use policy. I wanted to put that on the agenda and have a little discussion about how that policy is being implemented. There have been some concerns raised, and I've had some discussions with Philip on it, but I thought it was worthy of putting on our agenda to have a little more discussion about some of these specifics as to how this policy is currently, now that we have it, is being implemented.
So, I think I indicated to you that I have had a all-staff meeting where we brought everybody from all 3 schools and certified and non-certified people so that they have an understanding of these policies as well as their implications. And as always, or I have tried to frame this in the context of educational use clearly, and that the rationale for changing these or modifying our existing acceptable use policy is that as we move more to one-to-one computing and away from going to technology and having technology there with you, then these are necessary. I have indicated to the staff that this is not an open invitation for every teacher to just universally allow these devices to be coming into school. That working with the building principals, that when classroom teachers are ready to begin, loosening up or allowing some personal devices or using more one-to-one computing, whether it's from their own students' personal use or because we have enough laptops or devices to go around to a classroom, so that people actually will have an educational plan for them. It's not just an open, all of a sudden now you can bring it in because this is, and we have had this discussion when we initially approved it, this is using these devices for educational purposes only. So, and then I've had, obviously, discussions with the principals about responding to students who may violate these policies, and have indicated my strong desire to make sure that the natural consequences for misuse be given to students who do break this policy, and or staff members. I don't hope that will happen, but that there will be a clear message to kids that there are consequences, but that really underlying this whole thing is that these are educational tools. In our context, we're going to use them as educational tools, and we're going to teach kids responsible use of these educational tools. Will children break the rules? I think every one of us knows that children will break the rules, but we want to be able to not react to what we know is going to happen. We want to be ahead of it and help kids understand what that responsible use is about. And so that is why a teacher will be only allowing these devices in as they are becoming more adept in their educational purposes. So, right now, Becky Stapleton is moving forward with this. Dave Lewis is another teacher who's expressed interest in moving forward with this in the future. Amanda and I have a plan for the two of them working as a 6th grade group with their colleagues, and somebody from Educational Connection on how to advance this. So that's where we stand.
I understand all that, and, in regards to us, his letter and my own personal, feelings. I know I read my kids the riot app before they even did anything. Like, you're not taking them to school unless I know for sure that, your teacher wants you to bring it in. And I want to know from the teacher, though, that, and I wrote it right on policy when I returned it. I said, I want to be notified that my kid needs to bring it in. And I want to know for sure that the teachers are taking the direction that if someone's bringing this device in and they were not instructed to bring it in, then they need to let the parents know, or, the kid needs to be disciplined for it, and without, question. Because it's a new policy and we need to set the standards right off the bat. There can't be any leeway for allowing kids that freedom, that, or even letting them think that it's okay to have them for any other reason, outside of the fact that, education, and it can't be done, and,
Region 7 have a similar policy?
I don't know if they've updated theirs, but Region 7 is moving to a one-to-one computer.
That they would allow personal?
Yes, and they have already set up 2 networks, one for students, one for teachers. They already have that set up. So I actually think that they've actually already
My other concern is that, parents are hearing about misuse and other kids know about misuse, but doesn't seem to be getting to the teachers, or if it is getting to the teachers, it doesn't seem to be getting addressed. Or that, I don't know, I could be wrong, but just again, based on the letter, if that is truly happening, then, it's not acceptable. The acceptable use policy is not acceptable.
My concern is how are we enforcing and controlling wireless network? I know, in my home, as a parent, I'm not sending the devices to school with my kids, and I trust my kids. Well, I'm more concerned about something happening to the device and get stolen. But we had a pencil sharpener that cost $1, is now missing after 1 day. So, I'm thinking about it from that standpoint. But what about that student whose parents aren't paying attention, and they bring in the device, and here they are at school with wireless, they can do whatever they want, because I'm not sure that we have proper controls in place to make sure that they're being used properly. And I am concerned, and I'm not saying that there's any reports, it's just what you hear, somebody already took pictures and put them on Facebook. And Facebook has timestamp, and it happened during the day. So apparently, it happened in our school at some point in time.
If you're talking to it,
This is parking lot parents
I'm
talking, I
not
admit
sure
that
it's
it's
all
not
accurate. All I can
necessarily, I
say is
agree to
that
that.
the administration has responded to that.
So, my statement is, as a board member, not as a parent, how are we controlling to make sure that it doesn't, everything isn't gonna be perfect, I get that. There's gonna be.
How do we control kids'
loophole.
behavior?
But do we have the controls in place? Because like in my house, I got a password on my wireless. But then you give out passwords and everybody gets them. I don't know what the answer is. Are we working to
Well, that's why we're
solve
moving
something?
forward slowly. So, first of all, Becky is really spearheading this and helping us better understand ourselves how to control this. But obviously, we have ability to monitor those people, the devices that are being used. And obviously, kids are monitored for all the time that they're in our building. I mean, do they break a rule? You know, or do they sneak around the corner and do something? That's going to happen. It does happen. But we will respond in a way, in a natural consequence way. And a natural consequence meaning, you know, you lose your privilege for using the devices when you break the rule. And if they're used in a bullying context, we're going to follow our bullying policy. If they're used as a harassment context, we're going to follow our harassment policy. So, you know, just like we can't control every single behavior in a school, it's going to be, you know, that's the challenge. But we want to make sure that we're, as we do with behavior, we're proactively teaching, you know, through the STARS program, through whatever program we have, that there are appropriate uses for these educational devices, and that's really where we want to put our energy.
And I think they can't have them on them throughout the day. You know, if there's a section of the day that they need to use them, then, you know, they have them for that time. The rest of the time, they're locked up in the teacher's closet or something like that. I don't think they should have them in their desks. My daughter can't even have a little eraser or a squinky in her without being distracted by it. So, I mean, there needs to be some type of regulation, and the kids can't. It's impossible. None of us can do it. You hear something bleep and you want to check it, and now it's a nervous twitch. You know, it's.
So is the assumption that nearly all or all kids are going to have their own personal device to bring in?
For the older grades.
So the assumption is that by 5th grade, my daughter would have her own device?
That if she didn't, we would supply it.
Oh, that's.
I think there's a couple different things to weigh here, and I think the concerns are legitimate. I share them also, and I talked to Phil about it. I mean, first of all, the policy does say it's used for instructional purposes, but there is, how do we go effectuate that? How do we actually implement that to make sure that is always the case? And that's going to be a really hard thing to do. One thing I originally wrestled with, and I've come around about, is just the idea that I do think it is our responsibility to teach about these particular devices and the internet and everything else. Originally I thought that, well, that's really more of a home responsibility, but I think as these become more prevalent in our society, it does become our responsibility. I mean, my 4th grader came home and started to talk about drugs, alcohol, cocaine the other day because he's learning in health class, and I was kind of floored by it, and I'm like, here's a 10-year-old talking to me about these sort of elements of the car, and it kind of threw me back, but this is part of what we do. If we're talking about that, we certainly should be talking about how to use these devices appropriately. Now, in terms of bringing your own and that whole thing, I will say that, you know, my son is a member of Becky Stapleton's class, and they did come home with a letter saying, this is how we're going to use it, this is one thing in guidance, so that there was something there for that. So I at least felt comfortable in that sense that, you know, there was a plan in place. It wasn't just a free-for-all that, you know, kids are just bringing in their iPods now. It wasn't that, but, you know, how we go about this, and there might be some growing pains along with this, and making sure these are used at the appropriate times, you know, for the appropriate purpose. That is going to require some really strict monitoring of this, and I'm not sure how that's going to work itself out. You can't obviously control what they're doing all the time, and I know my kids
But we
do.
certainly try to.
Right.
We certainly do try to control them. We control their behavior, you know, wherever it is.
Yes, from my perspective, the control and the discipline is not as concerning to me because these are just new media, right? It used to be a paper or, you know, use your imagination what used to get brought to school if you don't have vivid memories of what some kid brought to school. Now it's just on a piece of electronics instead of on a piece of paper. So it's always been there and it always will be there. And we're going to have to find new ways of policing it. I guess I'm going to go back to my concern for a moment. It almost feels like there's some sort of pressure on me as a parent to provide my 11-year-old with $600 piece of electronics. And I'm not comfortable. Personally, my 11-year-old doesn't have the responsibility, I don't think she will, to own a $600 or $700 piece of electronics.
But
that
I mean-
she's gonna bring on a bus to
Well, that's what I
school.
mean, I think my daughter is
Yes.
responsible, but should she have to take that responsibility on? I don't like carrying around the iPad myself. I mean, I'm like, don't touch it, put it in the book, close it. I mean, it's,
I think
it's,
you've heard me say, personally, I agree with you, that I would like to have the control. And I said to the staff, I want to move toward us supplying them with the devices and not have this moving back and forth of personal devices. But we are talking about, you know, equity, and we are talking about trying to start this in a manner that allows everyone the opportunity to have the devices purely. And we also know that many of these kids already have a device.
Yeah, I guess
That
that's
is web-based.
but do they bring them to school? Is it different, to me, is it
Going
different?
from a different perspective is, right, many kids have these devices because they come from more affluent families. It tends to be the people who live in New Hartford these days. But not all families have the kind of money to spend on that. And are we setting up a situation now of those who have the money and have the devices and those who don't? And that strikes me as concerning. I don't know.
I don't know if I can,
I guess, is there something there, or am I going down, am I taking a tangent here that's not a,
I don't think you necessarily are. I mean,
No.
I talked to Phil about it too. I mean, it's one thing with a kid who brings their lunch to school every day because they can't afford it. That kind of gets sort of buried with everyone else. But another thing, when you have an electronic device, and there's definitely going to be some people who cannot afford these things. And are we setting up a stigma for some of these kids who can't afford it by allowing some who can afford it to bring them in? And that is, I think, a concern. But I think overall, the hope is, you know, I'm trying to think big picture here, and the hope that, you know, everyone has access at some point. You got to kind of start somewhere, but I think some of these concerns are valid, and we just need to kind of be aware of them as we move forward with this stuff. But I don't think we can just completely ignore it, pretend like it doesn't exist, because it does, and it is
I
part of
don't
us.
think that I, at any time in moving this issue forward, thinks that,
No.
that I want to bridge where, you know, I want to just bridge where we are to a more a futuristic, and that's a horrible word, but you know, the reality is that kids are going to have to understand how to use these for learning, and I think our society is moving in that direction, and that's why I believe, and I'm promoting this is to help better transition kids into that.
I read in the paper the other day, Encyclopedia Britannica is no
Yeah, I
longer
was
going
just
to be
thinking the same
doing
thing.
any print versions.
No, they're not,
year.
they're
They're
done,
done.
yeah.
It's all going to, it's all electronic now. So when you look at that, I mean, you can't even, there's going to be certain textbooks and things that you're not going to be able to access anymore from the book. You're just going to be able to get it on a computer.
Just take
so.
that whole notion of encyclopedia.
Yeah, but you could use a
Britannica.
computer, you don't have to necessarily have a tablet, and that's what gets me. People, oh yeah, I need an iPad, I need an iPod, I need an app. An app is a convenience, but there's a website that you could draw similar information, or same, or if not better sometimes. I mean,
Yeah.
my kids are all over that Brain Pop, whatever that app they use at school.
Yeah,
But yet
Brain
you
Pop,
can
Brain
go to
Pop
the
Tutor.
website and get a lot more than you can on the app. So it's just, I just like to keep it on perspective. So that's all
And
I'm saying.
I don't want to focus in on the device, I want to focus in on the learning.
Right.
So that's really what I want to lead here in this district, is the learning, and not necessarily Apple versus, you know, non-Apple, or iPad versus generic iPad, or, you know, because really what I'm looking for basically is a keyboard and an access to the internet that is filtered, as is all all devices in the district now. I mean, is it fail-safe? No.
But that's why I went and bought
A year
my
from
son
now,
the
maybe.
Nook Color. My husband and I argue over getting just an e-reader or just a Nook Color. I said the Nook Color, and my husband ended up getting it for him because it is the same as the Nook tablet and the Kindle Fire, because you have access to the internet, but it has a lock on it that I've locked on it so he can't download anything. And I've downloaded every classical book I could find for free. All the books that he's going to read when he gets to middle school and high school are on his Nook already for him to start reading. Three Musketeers, Romeo and Juliet, everything is out there now to download for free when we used to sit there and, as an English teacher, having to sit there and come up with my budget for how much money I have to buy books. Now they're on the internet for free.
Have you seen that on our main web page, we've created a blog for communication between parents relative to this issue, so that we can be out in front of this?
Wasn't it?
I think the announcement
Yeah.
was, so we have
Was
a
there
blog,
any,
we have
why do
some.
you wanna contribute, cause I didn't see anything when I looked.
I haven't either, but we also, one of the things that the tech team was talking about last week is we did this frequently asked questions, and I said, if we answer the questions before they're asked, we're removing that whole interactive part, so we backed away a little bit, there were much more detail.
Questions haven't been asked, how are they frequently asked?
Yes, that's what I was saying, like, let's let them ask some questions, so, that we want to be, again, out in front, we want to, help people understand, and also the parents understand that it's a shared responsibility, and I think my initial letter said that too, that we have to work together, that we have to teach kids as we do anything.
I hope my kids also that, it's not tattling, it's they're telling, if there's someone that is using something inappropriately, it's part of their responsibility that they sign, and I don't think that's a bad thing, because there's a difference between tattling and, if a kid sees another kid doing drugs, telling a parent is not tattling, that's looking out for that person, and same thing,
Remember, we had that discussion, I don't know if it was this board or the subcommittee, that piece with the teachers' acceptable use plan, that we actually have, that you are responsible as an adult, that if you see it being misused by another adult, that you take the necessary steps.
Now, is this, I know the policy is for all students under 6, but is the, lack of better words, are we encouraging older grades to bring in, or allowing the older and not the younger, or is this just like a, do you know what I mean?
Well, I look at the
It's
policy
out-
once again, to use for instructional purposes, so if a teacher is not designated that this is what you should be doing, you shouldn't be bringing it in,
That
period.
was your right.
So that's why, like, initially, I'm like, there's not a huge difference here, it's not like saying we're welcoming these things, it's just that they need to have an instructional purpose, which would then come from a teacher that says, this is what you're doing, and then hopefully spelled out, and yes, Becky Stapleton did do this,
Right.
6th grade teacher, said this is what we're doing in a letter, and after I saw that, didn't get me over the hump by any means, I was so concerned, but it made me feel a lot better, because it was like, okay, that this is how I envision this being there, that there is something there, so when my 2nd grader's like, oh, can I bring my iPod, does this mean, I'm like, no, it doesn't.
I
The
think
teacher's
that-
not come forward with something that says that this is what
Right,
it's used
and
for.
I agree that that's the case in your situation, and I like that, but what I'm hearing kids yelling about is, we get to bring in our iPods, I think there's a misunderstanding that we need to straighten that out a little bit.
Well, there's a great question to put on the blog.
Well, I didn't wanna blog, because I didn't think I should blog my own, a board member should blog their own thing.
Did you go over it with your kids?
I'm not talking about my kids, I'm
just
talking
saying,
about,
well, that's
in
a
general, I'm in the
responsibility
parking,
as a
that's what I
parent.
hear. I know, but I'm saying as a board,
know.
maybe we need to reemphasize the rule that these are supposed to be brought in when the teacher states that there will be an educational use for it, and not on a regular day-to-day basis to keep communicating with your Facebook or whatever.
I don't
But
think
that's
that's for
the
the
policy,
board to
That's
do.
the role of the board.
Well, I do
That's
think,
not our role. Our role
but
is
the
to.
policy is being broken. If people are bringing them in, which I know for a fact because I saw 3 in the parking lot the
Then
other
we
day.
trust that the teachers and the administrators are gonna deal with it.
And the parents.
I'm not saying that I don't trust that they aren't gonna deal with it. What I'm saying is, as a board member, that maybe it should be reiterated. That's what I'm saying.
Not by the board.
No, I'm not saying by the board.
Okay.
I'm speaking in conversation to the board that I think that the policy is being misunderstood, and that at this point in time, it should be recommunicated. I'm not gonna send the email. That's not my job, and I understand that. But I do believe it is our job to make sure that it's being done appropriately, and I do not believe that it's being followed.
Well, maybe Phil, maybe some of these concerns that we're talking about could be brought before your team, and then maybe something could be developed through the Friday folders, and maybe that's a way to communicate something if you feel appropriate to try to get the message out.
I think overall, we still are lacking with communication. I was having situation as a parent. And it was very disturbing to me, that whole policy, that for everything that Steve told us about, and I'm getting off topic, so stop me. But we're talking about communicating. How he's talking about the golden paw and all that stuff. I was talking to a parent who said that she had no clue about that. That had started, and that was in the caution thing and all that. And I said, the only I said, I knew about it because.
I mean, you
But
could bring
has,
water.
has
to
he,
be
but has he communicated that to parents?
He invites parents to all of his events, doesn't he?
I don't know, was a notice sent? I'm hearing no from did Steve send a notice out to parents? That, I guess I would like for, as part of the community conversation also, team. That was our huge objective.
Well, I think we're making great strides with it. I mean, we can just keep improving and honing stuff, but, if you look at what we do now with the Friday folders and compared to what we've done in the past, I think a lot of progress is being made. Is it perfect? No, but I think that we can get better, but I don't think that, to say that it's completely lacking, I think is a little missed.
I'm not, did I say lacking? If I did, I feel that we still have room for improvement. And I think that there's certain parents, certain teachers that are doing a much better job at it than others, and that's always gonna happen, but I think the ones that are lacking need to be brought along.
Yeah, but also you can bring a horse to water, but you can't make him drink. And there's plenty of people in our community that you could send them 20 emails about something and they're never gonna read it. So, there's only, I think there's a limit to what we can do with some of this stuff also.
From our end, I wanna know that we're doing our job, or that our administrators and our teachers are doing their job. If the horse isn't drinking the water, I can't control that, but we believe it is.
Okay, we're gonna move along now to the next item on our agenda, which is the policies, the second reading on the bullying policy. We're gonna start with that first. Bill, do you wanna go through like we've done and just sort of highlight what changes were made and?
So, one of the things you asked us to find out was why the change is happening, and I know that Janet emailed you that cave piece, right? So you all got that answer to your question. So I'm just responding to the notes that I made the last time. She sent an email as to why Cave's report as to why this bullying policy was necessary, the change in the bullying policy.
Sure, email.
You got the email, right?
I'm not sure.
Yeah, it
I don't
was an
think I've
act
seen it.
concerning the strengthening of school bullying laws. And I sent it out from Cave.
Did everyone get that?
All board of them.
I don't remember getting that.
We will make sure that we do it.
Okay.
You got it, I sent you a copy of it too, didn't you?
I know we talked about it, so
Okay.
if you haven't got it, we have it. And we'll send it to you. So no changes on page 1, no changes to page 2. The piece on number 14, and I think it appears a couple of times, require the principal of the school, or in the absence of the principal, his designee, notifies appropriate law, or in the absence of his absence, the superintendent will be the person who notifies the enforcement agency. I think that we made that clear. And I don't have the exact wording, but I think that's what the intent that you want to instruct me, that in the principal's absence, it's not the teacher in charge.
Correct.
It's either the principal or me, correct?
Correct.
Page,
We took out,
I'm
not
sorry,
rated.
yeah. Not later than January, and it
We took
begins
that
with a capital "the." All right?
Yep.
Page 4, nothing, and then we go into the school climate plan. 5, nothing. 6, no change. 7, no change. 8, put in the director of student services as the safe school climate coordinator. I had principal put in for letter B, but then I crossed it out because it does, the paragraph actually does mention the principal, doesn't it?
Yes.
So I didn't make that change. Page 9, the blank page is out. Letter D, again, it starts with the Board of Ed, and the not later than January 1st is out. And then publication of the rules, procedures, and standards of conduct for schools is out. So it should read, school climate plan is included in the school district's student handbook. Correct?
Right, yeah.
It should be book, I think, not handbooks. Nothing else on page 10. Page 11, letter E, notice to law enforcement if the principal of the school or in his or her absence, the superintendent of schools. And then we change sex and sexual orientation to gender and gender orientation. The pagination, that's typically how we have been, I don't know.
I don't know about the second one, but the first one, it's
Gender is fine.
sexual.
Because that change was made once in the next policy and not in other places. I scribbled out the change to gender and put it back. I've never heard that term before, gender orientation.
Yeah, I think it probably still remains sexual orientation.
Page 11, obviously the pagination is going to change. We're not going to have the dangler like it is in this policy. Page 12 at the top, letter A, the word written without prior written consent. All right. Page 13, no change. Letter I, assurance of our insuring. This was the debate. There was no resolution. It was, you
I
talked
thought insuring was what we're gonna use.
Or provide.
but I put a question mark because I remember specifically you hadn't really reached a decision on how you wanted that. So you just tell me now.
I don't think it matters. Insuring will provide. Elaine, it's your call, chair of the policy subcommittee.
Ensure,
Okay.
Ensure respectful responses
sure.
to bullying concerns raised by. Okay. Letter L had the gender role stereotyping. I'm not sure whether that is the appropriate language or not, but that was a change from the previous. And then the pause and the Ann Antolini STARS program would be an addendum. And that number 11 becomes number 10, and number 12 becomes number 11. So that the pause and the stars come at the end as an addendum, but it moves more slowly from, it's not number 10. Number 11 becomes number 10, and number 12 becomes number 11. And those are the changes I have from your first read.
But what the, all right, I'm sorry, you said that, never mind.
Okay.
A random question written on here, I don't know why. What actually goes into a student's record? I don't know if that was a question that we had.
That's a very complex answer that is also in our policies, what is and is not.
I don't know why it was like that. It could have been lack of oxygen in the room or something.
No, that was brought up, so I
Yeah.
remember that was something specific. I guess the question is, did we eliminate anything? When we eliminated other policies that would cover that?
But I think this student conduct policy is.
There's an issue of student records in that policy.
But this is a whole different bullying.
But bullying's addressed in here as well. Here being a student conduct, sorry.
I knew you were saying, I guess I was thinking, because with the bullying policy being such a state thing, do we have to cover ours? Well, it would be in here if we had to do that though.
If it fell under either a discipline issue as well as a bullying issue, we have a separate bullying file as per this law. I think that's addressed in the law. Of the events, we have to have numbers of events that have occurred, verified bullying events.
Anyone want to make a motion concerning this policy?
make a motion to approve policy 5131.911, bully prevention and intervention,
As
as
amended.
amended.
Motion from Sue,
I'll second it.
second from Elaine. Any further discussion? All those in favor? Unanimous. All right. Thanks for your hard work on that. The next one that we're gonna look at tonight is the, first reading of the student conduct policy, 5131A. And, why don't we go through it just, one page at a time. We have a preamble, so these are gonna be, pages are gonna change, so I'm gonna start with our existing policy, which is the preamble, pages 1 and 2. I had a question concerning the second page. I guess we'll start with the first one. Anything on the first page of that? Moving to the second page, I had a question. When you get to the, where it says discipline, middle of the second page, is that, in our existing policy, there's a 3 and a 4. Is that eliminated, that whole discipline section?
Say that again?
Like, this is our existing policy, but if you looked at it,
Oh.
I
oh.
thought,
Did you copied it from the existing policy?
Right.
Right.
but it seemed to me that the discipline section, that's on the second page, there's paragraphs 1 and 2 that follow. In our existing policy, there's a paragraph 3 and 4 that goes on to the next page. So is that considered part of this, or?
Cut
no?
off?
I think that was a mistake. Don't you, Philip?
Cutting it off, or,
I think so,
or not,
but I'm not sure.
or is discipline itself should be eliminated?
No. I don't know.
To be honest with you, I actually thought we were just gonna use the philosophy of discipline.
That's what I thought.
Melissa, do you remember?
And take that all out?
Yeah, the purpose of it was, the
Right,
reason for
it's
the
just
preamble
right,
was the
yeah.
purpose of.
I don't remember this back
Because
card.
we didn't have, right,
We
there
just
was no
started with
preamble provided by
Right.
Shipman and Goodwin. And we
Right.
felt that
Started
there
with
was,
definitions.
that was really missing. And so,
Just wanted to.
Now, it doesn't mean you couldn't put it all
Well, I
back.
didn't see the really
but-
need for it, I guess it was cut off halfway, so I didn't know if it was, reading this, I was like, okay, so you want the philosophy of discipline, you want the students' rights and responsibilities, but you don't want where it goes to
I
discipline.
don't think you do. So
right.
you have to determine now, do you need students' rights and responsibilities, or whether just the philosophy of discipline is enough as a preamble to your policy?
I think the philosophy of discipline is
So why don't you-
enough because of the rest, the students' rights and responsibilities come out through the rest of the policy.
Thinking that's
I
accurate.
didn't even look at this one, I looked at our old one, I didn't have this side, so
So
I just have that.
So this is our first
one.
reading.
Yeah, it's our first reading.
It's on the table that we would consider just the philosophy of discipline
Yeah.
as your preamble. And if you reread it and reread our existing policy and think differently, then you put it on the table the next time we meet.
Okay,
Good.
sounds good.
But we definitely agree that discipline, the piece after student rights, is not included.
Correct.
It's just whether 2 is. Okay?
Okay, so now we'll start with the page 1 of the Shipman and Goodwin policy itself. And obviously there's some changes there that are,
So I tried to show you what the policy, the subcommittee did, and, it's up to them to explain if necessary, or if you have any more specific questions. But this is, this came with also me contacting Rebecca for clarification purposes because of some of the questions that the subcommittee had. So know that this has gone through your attorney as well, and it's,
not only did they write it, but
But we went through
They've
it.
been
Answer
questions.
answer your question out. So, other than the changes that are noted here, anything else on page 1? 2? 3? 4? Again, for that sexual orientation, gender orientation there, I think that that second gender.
should be right, the first one's not, second.
5, 6,
Can we go back to 5 for a second? This is maybe me nitpicking, but being under the influence, number 15, being under the influence of any such substances, referring back to, what was it? I think that if I read the letter of this, it would say that if I came to school after having taken an Advil, I'd be in violation of the policy. I have to go back and.
But it says unauthorized possession, sale, distribution, consumption.
Including being under, so unauthorized.
Being under the influence of any unauthorized substance.
I guess I got lost in the number of words. Alright.
The lawyer talk.
Yeah, well, yeah, it's easy for me.
So anything else on page 5?
The other thing is, math related.
Say it.
So,
That's what you're here for.
if I had an inhaler with just the apparatus of an inhaler without the actual medicine in it, would that be in violation? Possession of paraphernalia used or designed to be used for the consumption, sale, or distribution of
What do you know
drugs?
with this device?
Well, I guess it would matter what you're doing with it, but if you just had it and there was
But it
no.
doesn't say that, it says possession of the I don't know.
Yeah, that is a,
Is it used or designed to be used?
To administer my asthma medication.
Right, but not illegal drugs.
But no,
I
drugs
guess
is
a
not
teacher,
defined as
I
illegal.
guess a teacher would take
If you
it
go
away
back,
from a
drugs are
child.
defined as any medicine.
My guess is that if a child brought in an inhaler without the medicine part and was displaying it, it would be confiscated and researched as to why isn't there the other part to it, and where'd you get this? Through the nurse and a call home, that's my
Well,
guess.
keep in mind, look, it says back on page 4, this is conduct which may lead to disciplinary action, so
Okay.
obviously there's some,
So-
yeah, we're gonna take all these things in some
Alright,
context as to what.
that may have been lost on me, that it says may lead to,
Right.
Yeah.
because I think that's actually an important part that I'll
Because there's
keep in
times where
mind.
we've confiscated cough drops from students, and I've had students come in with their fathers send them in with, something I was shocked at a first grader being sent to school with. And I, as a substitute, I call the school nurse says confiscate it, and usually the teacher or the nurse will send a note home.
Well,
This is the first time, or something like that.
Anything on page 6? 7? 8?
I'm sorry. Why did we back on page 6, why did we strike out BlackBerry personal data?
Because they're mobile or handheld devices.
Right, it was redundant.
It's redundant.
Okay.
And we kept walking.
That's fine.
Yeah, we kept.
What's a walk?
I wanted that in me.
It's
not a whole
Do
lot.
you even use those anymore?
No. How with the dinosaurs?
I actually just saw an
I
ad
think you
for
should put a
walkie-talkies
nano.
that had like a 16-mile working radius that I almost went and bought them.
All right,
You should
page
do
7,
one on that.
8,
Oh, yeah, so I see it.
9,
that's fine.
No, it's in-
7 years.
10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17. The only question is just you have a page break. Does that mean it's going to start, since we want to start on a whole other page?
Yes,
It'd still be part of the same policy.
yes.
18, there's a lot of changes there that were made by the subcommittee.
Realignments.
A lot of them refer to
High
older
school-
children
high
that
school age.
we don't service.
Yeah. Okay. 19. 20. 21. 22. 23. 24. 25.
We should start, 25 has the,
Legal references.
yeah.
So with the policy, then we move on to the, I guess these would be addendum if we were taking that, but, I mean, you guys obviously included them for us to look at, but we weren't gonna use them.
Correct,
Okay.
because they would come directly from the attorney based on whatever the situation was.
Right. I mean, we would just do our own specific one to our situation rather than use some kind of generic form.
Correct.
Which makes more
That's
sense to
right.
me, anyway.
Right.
Okay, so that's four, just so I'll go through them all, the forms 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. You know, obviously, we're not going to be pushing those forward, but they were there for our purposes, so that's great. Okay, once again, first reading of that, we will take up the second one, next meeting.
And also, note that.
Right. The next item, and I guess this is gonna be our technically our first, and I'm putting in quotes, reading of the elimination of several policies which now appear to be redundant. The first one is bus conduct, 5131.1. Drugs, alcohol, and tobacco, 5131.6. Weapons and dangerous instruments, 5131.7. Corporal punishment, reasonable physical force, 5131.92. Cheating, academic honesty, which I don't quite understand myself why that one's included, because it's not really picking up in the student conduct policy. That's 5143. And then discipline of students with disabilities, 5144.3. So, Karen would just explain to me why the cheating academic honesty is being eliminated?
Use of copying academic work or another
Yeah.
individual presenting it as a student's
here.
own work is listed right here, paragraph
Where is it?
26, 26 on page 6.
Yep.
It's right in there.
I remember talking about this, Elaine, because
Yep.
Elaine's always been our advocator of the
Right.
importance of making sure that we have.
Okay, I missed that, thank you.
Nice catch.
Yeah.
I didn't know where it was, but I
Yeah,
knew it was there.
Yeah, me too.
Okay, so is there any discussion about I'm just gonna start with that set up top first. Those
That's one of my
5
pet peeves.
policies or 6 policies I just listed in terms of our first reading, in terms of eliminating them. We'll take it up again next time as a second reading of those. I'm calling them readings, but obviously I'm not reading them. And then we move to the next section here, which deals with non-discrimination. I mean, I didn't quite understand where it says the following existing policies are also covered under policy 0521. We don't have a 0521.
It's right in your packet.
Yeah,
0521, mission goals objectives.
Yeah,
Is that in our new packet?
it's in the, no.
You just got. New packet.
Oh, there we go.
So you didn't have what
I actually thought we did have it too.
I never saw.
And that was an updated version.
It's in this, right? Right.
How did we get a 0 in the front of one of our policies?
Because it's under mission goals objectives. That's the 0. The zeros.
We haven't spent a lot of time with
No, we
zeros.
haven't, there aren't a lot of them.
Okay.
1,000.
Okay, I stand corrected. I was looking under the, I guess I was looking, I thought it was a typo, so I was looking at like 5021 or something like that. I didn't really look at the 0521, so that's
It
where I
is
was.
there. I'm pretty sure it is.
Okay, I'll double check that.
It's in there.
Well, I'll just list those again too, as ones we're looking to eliminate. non-discrimination, which is 5145.4, racial harassment of students, 5145.42, exploitation, sexual harassment, 5145.5, and student grievance procedure, 5145.6. So is there any discussion about the elimination of those set of policies? Okay, so that's our first reading of the elimination of those policies, and that's great work. People on the policy subcommittee bring this up forward. All right, moving to the last item on our agenda, which is reports, standing committees. Amy, anything?
Policy meets on Friday at
Oh, that
12:30.
doesn't.
What?
He's being wise, he got you good on that one. He said, what, it does?
Oh, yes, policy meets on Friday. We haven't met since our last meeting, so I have really nothing.
Since our last meeting.
Since our last
I think
Board
it's
of Ed
getting late.
meeting,
Yep.
so I have nothing new to report from the policy.
Okay. I'll just give you a quick update on long-range planning. We met this, right before this meeting, and we decided to try to set up a joint meeting with our Board of Selectmen and Board of Finance to try to vet the idea of, possible consolidation and elimination of Bakerville School. We have some preliminary stuff that we're trying to, that we put together, and we're trying to bring it forward to get some additional input from those boards to see where they go. We look at this as going to be, we need cooperative procedure in place that everyone's kind of on board on and understand, and so we're going to be looking to reach out to them and try to get a meeting arranged between the boards so that we can have further discussion concerning that. So that's where we stand on that. Any questions? Motion to adjourn? Motion by Sue.
Second.
Melissa's got a second. All in favor? Unanimous.
Okay, back to the job.